Hello, folks, and welcome to Billy Maine's July 31st story time. Today we're going to be focusing on disability history and rights and activism, like we always do. We're going to do as much as we can this month. Well, today on focusing on the month of July as Disability Pride Month, and I'm going to be talking some history and legislation before the ADA, sort of giving a primer of how the ADA became the ADA before it was the ADA, and then I think we're going to go down into talking about some cool things that happened in July. I'll probably go over the topic a bunch of times. I know that for news on EDA anniversary number 33 on the 26th of July, the Department of Transportation federally announced that all airlines will be required to have wheelchair accessible bathrooms in planes in about 12 years, or about 10 to 12 years, depending on which plane. And unfortunately, it's really a long time. Side note, I actually know so the whole reason why planes accessibility became such a big issue is because of an activist named Alice Conway, who sued United Airlines back in the 90s. She won a federal court case. Her settlement was not much. It was paltry. It was pathetic. And she really went to work on the ACAA, the Air Carrier Access Act, which I called the Alice Conway Access Act, but she didn't want names after her. That was from her husband. And I believe Olympia Snow's people confirmed that as well. I don't know, but I don't think that something that happened in the 90s takes, 35 years to do better. I mean, we were working on educating people. We started doing, so the first federal government program to allow people with disabilities demanding inclusion in a community setting was Head Start as a pilot in 1964 with 4-year-olds, which was huge because it would be another 10 years plus before IDEA went into effect. The DEA being the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which provides for IEPs and PETs and the right for any child to go to a free and appropriate education, public education, in fact. But that pilot program was really important because it was all over America. It was in cities and towns across America, like Lewiston, Maine, where, Alice Conway was a 4-year-old that got to be in the pilot program, but then she wasn't allowed to go to school the next fall because of the archaic city programs and laws surrounding continents in the 60s. And they were changed it was stuff like that that really help with people get included in mainstream society. So you had stuff like Head Start in 1964, 1968, the Architectural Barrier Act, which was done by Hugh Gregory Gallagher, who went on to be a huge historian and wrote a history of FDR. Was at the FDR Memorial when it was founded, and when they put the statue of FDR there. She actually wrote the majority of that bill because she needed it. And then, so with that, you get schools that are accessible. And with schools that are accessible in 75, you pass IDEA. Then you work on trying to get inclusion, so you can get schools, so you can get, kids with intellectual disabilities, kids with physical disabilities. Well, if the Architectural Barrier Act says that everything post 1968 federal funds has to have accessibility, and that puts in motion things like when John Huckenberry went to the public radio station in a community college in Eugene, Oregon. They had wheelchair advocates so that he could volunteer. And in the 70s, that was rare. He writes, or he spoke somewhere that, it was, he said, well, it was a promising sign. And that, literally, if you think about it, it could have been the difference between him being a journalist and him deciding to be like, hey, this isn't going to work out. But, he got to the one place that he was going to try and be a journalist, and they had a rep. They didn't know he was in a wheelchair. I don't think he told them. He just sort of worked out. Serendipity, I guess, but that community college had to get federal funds. And actually, after IDEA, I'm not sure if it would have gone to the radio station, because I know there are radio stations at private universities that are not accessible, but it's stuff like that that really helps, because by the time the EDA was passed, well, actually there was something else before that. In 1986, the Kennedy-Beckett Supreme Court Act was passed. I think that act is really not looked at as a possible barrier for the ADA in the future. I'll explain why. Basically, Kennedy-Beckett, and as a Beckett plaintiff, I can speak to this. Basically, it was extremely difficult to get a disability claim as a child. Before Beckett. After Beckett, it became a lot easier. And after Beckett, anyway, who applied beforehand had to basically be told they qualified, because the entire process was redone. And so Beckett happened, and people with disabilities were finally given an income to live on. That would be additional to whatever was made by their parents or their household. And so, Medicare, Medicare, health insurance. And back in the 80s and 90s, and I would say even before Obamacare and the ACA, health insurance is the primary reason why people will stay on Social Security, because if you go to private pay plans, it's awfully difficult to figure out how to get someone to have a PCA paid for, or to have specialists paid for, whereas you need to have your doctor take care of it with Medicare and get it private off. It's a heck of a lot easier. I'll say that straight out. And like, so I think what happened was after the ADA went into effect, um, there's a travel period at Social Security of 9 months. But that's not enough time to really get your grasp on what could be 3 to 5 years to learn a job or a career and to really thrive. Um, and, and someone who's in their 20s doesn't know, isn't as savvy as someone who's in their 40s or someone who's older. And so, and additionally, the government works to support employment by saying if you want a combination, you have to sue your employer. Well, I don't want to sue my employer if my employer is someone that I want to work with. Usually you don't sue them. So that seems to be adversarial. And just lots of other real basic issues around accommodations, transportation, and when you're disabled and you're at your first job, you don't know what you don't know. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. You can't make up for experience you don't have. And so you don't have advocate for yourself. You don't have a background that other people might have. You don't have other mentors necessarily that you might have, that other people may have access to. That's hard because the rules can be new and, challenging. A major corporation can be really dangerous or seem dangerous or difficult and panicky. So, the ADA is a great law. It's definitely not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. I can go and see my friends at the mall and hang out with them, and that's great. And I can go and, go to some place and know that I can get accessible seat. And like Melissa Esther's is playing this Friday, and they're at the Elements flagship store, and they have an excellent disability viewing area that I think is great. Anyway, the parking could be a little bit better, but transit, Freeport, it's always difficult. So I'm doing the best I can to broadcast. I'm having a slow connection error, so if I do have a slow connection, I do apologize. The ADA was really also important because a lot of really incredible activists did things like the Capitol Crawl, which was climbing up the U.S. Capitol, and a lot of that is documented in the Netflix documentary Crip Camp. There's chapbooks written that are being documented the lives of many people that are involved. So it wasn't just a bunch of do-good senators, although Tom Harkin is awesome, and the interview that he agreed to give me in 2003 was nothing short of incredible. And being able to hang out with him and do stuff was great. Again, slow connection in the morning. I'm really trying with this hard to not mess it up. I don't know why it's messing up. So if I do go off, or if somehow this comes off, it could be because of the weather. I know that there is some issues with storms and stuff. But going back to what we were talking about, the ADA is super important. Disability Pride is super important. Disability Pride's birth um, celebration was in 1990, I believe, in Boston, or 1991. It could have been. I think it was 1990 though. I know it had John Huckleberry involved and Amy Hasbrook. And Amy Hasbrook now lives in Canada, and she does an anti-assisted suicide blog based out of, I believe, Quebec. And I know that there was an article in the Boston Globe about this, and so that was the first Disability Pride. There have been Disability Pride events around the world virtually since then. Sarah Giano in Chicago was she's an incredible actress. She did these amazing Disabled and Proud t-shirts in American and then also in Spanish. English and in Spanish. I'm not with it today. I apologize. I'm trying best I can. And I have one of those shirts, and it's ripped to pieces, so I'll be wearing it. And I know the people that actually made the shirt. It's a good friend of mine. Also disabled, so that was cool. And I've been to disability rights celebrations all throughout the country, because that's just what I do. I mean, I used to book vacations to go to DC, go to ADA conferences and medical conferences, usually in the week of the ADA, and I was there for the 10th anniversary, although you can go to the White House. 20th anniversary, I went to Boston and saw Huckleberry at a disability pride event on the Boston Commons, which I believe I did actually cover for Billy Maine. I've covered most of the events from, or I know about most of the events that have happened in Maine since the signing. I know on the 5th year anniversary, there was a small, probably non-public event in Kennebunk or something where Mike Noyes with Senator Snow's office and two disabled people met with the president, shook his hand, and that's all I saw on the video from WABI. I don't believe there was much coverage of it otherwise than that. The 10 had stops in Boston, it's close to the country of Maine. I know that in 2014, I covered an event at the Portland Library, and that's on YouTube as well. I covered it for Billy Maine. Sorry, I had to have a little bit of water. And Disability Rights Maine has been doing Disability Pride events for a number of years. Our parent organization, Ross, actually tabled at their event this year. I didn't make it up there because of the weather. It's been so hot, I've been having a hard time even being able to do this. And today is nice and it's 33 degrees, but it's also a Monday and it's extremely tiring. I'm extremely tired, and I'm trying to remember the stuff I'm gonna cover, and sometimes failing miserably. And basically, let's figure out what we can do for this really Pride history for July. Michael Graves was born on July 9th, and he is an architect who has, if you look at Target stores, his names were all over a lot of the contemporary furniture that you bought there, the toiletries, the stuff you bought, your household items, stuff like that. She 2003, she had a unknown infection that made him rely on a power wheelchair for mobility. As he was paralyzed from the waist down. He was born in Indianapolis and attended Broad Rubble High School, receiving his diploma in 1950. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Cincinnati, where he became a member of Sigma Chi fraternity, and a master's degree from Harvard University. He was an architect and public practice in New Jersey since 1964. Graves is also the Robert Schumer Professor of Architecture MLS at Princeton University. He directed his firm's Michael Graves Associates, which has offices in Princeton, New York City. In addition to the popular line of household items, Graves and his firm have earned acclaim for a wide variety of commercial buildings and residential buildings and interior design. Graves was a fellow of the American Institute of Architects in 1939. In 1999, Graves was awarded the National Medal of Arts. In 2001, the gold medal for the American Institute of Architects. He is still active as of 2009 in his practice, which is currently involved in a number of projects, including additions to the Detroit Institute of Arts and a large integrated resort in Singapore. And unfortunately, the only other information I have for this day would be from next month, and August 1st would be Jerry Garcia's birthday, so that would be cool. But I do have more information to go through. Hold on, please. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. I'm doing everything I can to So I touched upon this earlier. I didn't want to give a little more information about it because I have it in front of me. So on the 26th of last Wednesday, the Federal Transportation Department announced that they're finalizing regulations to require more commercial aircraft to have accessible bathrooms. So single planes with 125 seats will eventually be required to have at least one lavatory large enough for a disabled passenger and attendant to enter and move around in. Twin airplanes are required to have an accessible lavatory. And Secretary Pete Buttigieg said in a statement, traveling can be stressful enough without having to worry about being able to access a bedroom, a restroom. Yet, today, millions of military users are forced to choose between dehydrating themselves before boarding planes or avoiding air travel altogether. This is a serious issue. I know it's affected me personally. Any other people traveling is stressful. I mean, when you go to any sort of airport, airports are huge. The amount of walking you use, you're using a new mobility device, or even a mobility device you're not used to, or if you are used to it, you're using it. Plus, you're carrying items, you're going through security, you're being stressed out, you're having parts of your body touched, you're being moved in ways you're not used to. Last year, with all the extreme weather, your flight can be canceled, you can be left without medical supplies, including supplies that you would use to go to the bathroom. Yeah, so this is really, really important. Again, this is things that started in Maine. Alice Conway, who lived in Auburn, was the first person to sue an airline for discrimination because she couldn't use the bathroom. And this was in the 1990s. I believe it settled in 1997. I'm probably wrong about that. I don't. Yeah, I think it was early 97. But it was, so this is really important. So again, it's going to be a 12-year delay between the process and the other guy put other things such as grab bars and arbitrary. So I am seeing that now. I saw that on a flight a couple of years ago, I believe. And people make a good point. You know, but it's going to be helpful for people with disabilities. It's going to be helpful for all other people. And on that note, it's been a long time on this chatting. I'm exhausted beyond words. It's been a great Disability Pride Month. It's been a hot Disability Pride Month. It's been the hottest recorded month in the history of the world. Which is kind of scary. Thank God the UPS strike got averted. The union called it off, so apparently they got the demands met, whether they are, which it would have been very hard for people in rural communities who rely on deliveries to get their medical supplies. And so that's a big deal. Again, if you missed us and call us and watch us on the afterview, thanks. And thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Great to see everybody who did come on during this. I'm sorry it's a little bit tech heavy and proper heavy and legislation heavy and history heavy and stuff. And I'll work on that next month. I think we can do something much more lighthearted and interesting and much more relaxed. I'm sorry I'm so stressed out. I think I just might have had an anxiety attack beforehand. In any event, I'm glad that I was able to get this done. We enjoyed the story time, and hopefully you learned a lot about disability history, the architectural barrier Access Act, the Capital Call, the ADA, the First Disability History Month, um, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully you have a great day and a great week. Be well.